All right, everybody, welcome back to Cork Stats NFL Live on the Mayo Media Net here on YouTube. Man, thank you everybody for following us over from baseball. The show has done really, really well. Last week was the embarkation show, the first one, and I made probably the worst mistake that a host can make, and I didn't lead with my best foot forward, letting my big mouth get in the way of my introduction. So let's not do that. What's up, Chris Meaney, my friend, and one of the best multi-sport guys, quite literally in the game. Christian betting records speak for itself, man. What's up?
Respect, Big John. It's been a while. When you were asking me if we could get together, I was like, absolutely. I couldn't sleep for like 2 or 3 days. So I am super excited to chop it up with you, pick your brain, and just, most of all, like, obviously, hopefully your viewers and your listeners get something out of this, but just to kind of catch up and talk some football as we're like 40 some odd days away from week 1. It's basically here, man. And I love it.
Yeah, and right off the bat, of course, you mentioned our natural chemistry and connection, but it usually does leave something for listeners. And I think that's one of the things we'll be talking about is how, I mentioned the multi-sport thing, and I was speaking about this. I had Ian from PFF on last week. He is such a goat. And if you could get past me rambling those first 5 minutes, everybody, check that one out. You just go back a little bit. But really, once I kind of found my groove, I'm so used to rocking alone, and then I was kind of geeking out. I'm working here with guys I used to, spend all my time listening to. So, Chris, again, welcome, and thank you, everybody. Check out the last one. Check out the next one. Hopefully this sticks, because I know I'm up to some pretty sharp stuff. And with baseball, I'm kind of the teacher. And with football, I transitioned into being more of a student. And that's what I was doing with Ian, and that's what I'm doing here with you, Chris. So I think we should just get right into it. Let's start, you teaching, me learning. So first up, what's up with you? You always have so much going on. Could you just lay out the landscape? What can people expect from Meaney, in the upcoming months, these transition months?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So still doing Mean Streets 5 days a week, covering absolutely everything. Obviously hockey and basketball have slowed down a little bit, but doing some MLB picks and props just like yourself every single day, looking at it mostly from a betting angle, some season-long content in there, maybe just a little bit of a DFS sprinkle, but lots of football previews, like team previews now, additions, subtractions, win totals, a little bit into the future market in terms of player props, but mostly like fantasy. Where are these guys going in drafts? Where's the edges? Where's the value? Stacks from a best ball standpoint, a season-long standpoint. So Mean Streets will continue on. The hockey season will be here before you know it in October. Myself and Eric Young will be back together, Dangle Bet Selling. We also have another show, Eric Young and myself, which will launch in the first week of August over on Game Plus Network as well. Twice a week, it'll be a football show with Eric and I. So on Tuesdays, we'll get together. We'll kind of recap the week, Tuesday from Monday Night Football, the week that happened, hit the waiver wire a little bit, big takeaways. And then on Thursdays, we'll get into our best bets and NFL stuff like that. We also have an MLB betting show launched in August as well, 3 days a week with myself over on Game Plus Network as well. Of course, Mayo Media Network's all over Game Plus Network. So lots happening. Still loving it, man. Miss you every day, but still just grinding and trying to hit up all the sports. So just trying to create a distraction for everyone. Hopefully, put a few bucks in people's pockets as well.
Well, I mentioned the track record that you just kind of alluded to. I think also we have to add some modesty. How about that lineup, Chris, is quite literally the one-man band. Like before I was the one-man band, that was you, Chris. You mentioned Eric. I'm a big fan of his. I'm going to actually get to meet him at the Flex Draft you and I were speaking about. He has another really interesting overlap, right? So I always really liked yours. It's funny, I joke every child that I've had has cost me a sport. And if I didn't have my son, me and you might be talking hockey. I was a tremendous Ranger fan. I love the Rangers, but it's just very hard to keep up with all that stuff. But when I get to Eric, it's actually wrestling. And a lot of people may not know this. I'm a WWF historian, like an old school. Oh my gosh, I have seen these things. I used to watch them till my eyeballs fell out. If I was sick and out of school, I could probably recite to you the card of every major pay-per-view from 1988 without looking. I'm dead serious. And half of the finishes, no kidding aside. So I love these interesting overlaps. And that was the first thing I wanted to talk about, multi-sport. Some people say you really need to focus on one thing. I used to feel that way. And I think you have to get something to a certain place, like my baseball work. You begin to automate it. You open up your interests. So for you, Chris, who's always on the move, where does your football work begin? I know, try not to cop out of me where it never ends. But like, you have to put
No.
away a little bit, right? Where does it start?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, you've been talking some fantasy guys. You mentioned Ian. That guy's like in tune all year. Like if you were asking that question, he's just in tune 24/7, 12 months of the year. Yeah, you have to take a little bit of a step back. I remember when I first met Mayo, and I have to give so much credit to Mayo for the position that I'm in right now. And even talking to you on Mayo Media Network, he told me like you really should pick one and roll with it. And then when we started to get to know each other really well, he's just like, you know what, just kind of do your thing. You may at some points have to take, step away from certain sports. And I think over the past couple of years, I've really stepped away from the NBA. So, right around the NFL draft is kind of where I just say goodbye to the NBA. I'll get back into it come playoff time, give some picks and some bets that way. Hockey's just nonstop for me. So I'm into it. NFL draft, and then I kind of have to step away a little bit after that draft. I'll kind of put together what I think, a little quick projections, initial projections, depth chart, things like that. And then I get back into the hockey, and it's really just kind of balls to the wall in the NHL until, we get into the third round. There's only like there's 4 teams left, 8 teams left. And then I can get back into it NFL wise. So it's roughly, I'll take the break, honestly, from the minute that Super Bowl is won in February draft, and then away from it again until probably 4 weeks ago, like the middle of June, maybe first couple weeks in June, back into everything with, oh yeah, what's the coaching changes, the defensive players. Everybody knows that the top dogs that left, and Adams and Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown, a lot of this offseason was crazy. So then you get back into maybe the coaching, defense, offensive lines, looking at team futures, looking at divisions. So yeah, I kind of, baseball's this like baseball too, right? You have baseball to kind of hammer home through everything from April until, right into football. Like once we get into September, all 4 of the big 4 sports will be rolling again. I don't know how Pat does it with the golf in there as well. So I take a little bit of a break until probably the first couple weeks of June, but now that we're pushing August, it's football every day.
Yeah, I think it's time to have your eye on it now, and I think you and I are probably similar in the time frame, a little different in the approach. But again, this is always something I talk about, Chris. I try not to be right opposed to wrong. You and I just do it differently. The thing that I want people to realize, because I do get this question a lot, is just be better at scheduling. Be good at scheduling. Know to put something down. Like this morning, I was rushing to get all my baseball tools out. And if you're unfamiliar, everybody, there's one more hat tip for our dude, Pat Mayo, as good a guy or better as you can imagine, who really has brought me all the ability, my screaming children, to bring you this awesome show, I hope. But to Chris's point, and what matters, the specialization of trade, understanding what you're good at. I think to Pat, one last hat tip is allowing things to flourish, right? Not forcing things into a box, but sometimes it could be too much, right? So you need to try and do as much as possible, but know what's efficient, what isn't. That's what I mean. Today I was juggling a whole bunch of stuff, and I said at this time you have to set it down and kind of shift gears and get into other stuff. And then one last thing you mentioned that, of course, I mentioned before, there are no limit to Ian and Dwayne McFarland PFF mentions that we can have here because of people like that, people like that, and how incredibly sharp they stay throughout the entire season. It allows somebody like me in a very little bit of time, right? Because what am I talking about? Being efficient, right? Which matters. I do a ton of work. If you're going to handicap baseball, 15 games every single day, you better be efficient. Right? You better be efficient. And at the detail that I'm trying to bring some of this stuff, it's almost too much. So you learn to automate, you learn to become efficient, and again, you learn to not watch hockey. Like that was my thing, right? So you have to, but you have to understand what works and what doesn't. I think, Chris, that's one of the keys from watching from the outside that I would say watching is the key to your success. That, you juggle several balls, but not so many that I ever feel like the quality of your production falls. Like the quality of the work really doesn't fall. And in fact, you've actually, watching your stuff, knowing firsthand, you've been quite honest about it when you feel stretched out. So I think there's a level of transparency to your work that really matters too, man. I'm telling you, everybody, obviously not following Chris, just unfollow me. Don't follow him also. Just unfollow me.
Kind words, dude, man. Not needed, but I do appreciate that. And I think, it's pretty good advice for people that are watching that maybe want to get into this industry as well. I mean, you certainly want to follow your passion, but you don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. Like you really have to you're not fooling anybody with your analysis. Like, you don't want to half-ass it. You want to dive into what you really feel passionate about, but also give the best analysis that you can. And, it is certainly a grind. And that was me, 8-10 years ago in this industry. Like, oh my goodness, like I'm a little overwhelmed. Like I feel like, it's covering basketball on a nightly basis, and then NHL. And then once you get into March, like everything is happening in March, like everything. Oh, you want to give a little bit of March Madness stuff. It's like, okay, you got to dive into that. But then the NFL draft is happening, free agency races in the NHL are happening. You want to have, MLB drafts are happening as well. NBA races for playoffs are happening. But yeah, you can find a bit of a balance there. I've stepped away from the association. I'll never step away from the NHL, and I'll never step away from football and baseball. Those two sports are king as well. So yeah, it's fun, man. Is still here, so still having fun. That's I think the biggest takeaway.
That's right, and you got the maple syrup in your veins to prove it. That's right, NHL. He's not going. He's not going anywhere. No, Chris. All kidding aside, before we chop into the football, I know. People want to know about that stuff. I know I get asked it a lot, and I've asked you that in my past. You being one of the people that's really helped me, kind of get to where you want to go. And the main takeaway from what you just said for me was provide value. You have to provide value.
Yeah.
There's a ubiquitous flow of information. A lot of people are copying and pasting stuff now, maybe more so than recently, but you gotta provide value. Think about what's not being done, how you can do it. Think about what may be missing and how you can fill that hole. It's not always brain surgery that gets you there. I am like quite literally the living embodiment of that. Yes, my work, the things I've made are clever. I give you that. A lot of them are not incredibly complicated. The quality start stuff, a lot of stuff that I've moved forward with, triple slashes and things, are just intuitive. So there, everybody, provide value, work hard, know what you're good at, specialization, trade. That's really what I was hoping for the first 10 minutes with Chris Meaney. Thank you so much, because people want to leave with things. You know what I mean? They want to leave. You provide value to content creators, Chris, not just the listeners. But now let's stop worrying about me. Let's get into them. My blind spot coming from baseball, again, 24/7, almost feels like an understatement, right? If I could create another hour in the day for myself, I'd probably spend it working on baseball like an idiot. So you actually mentioned the thing that winds up in my blind spot. Yeah, I'm not going to brag about knowing that Tyreek Hill is on the move. But where I find, and this probably isn't just me, I think it's a fantasy community at large, the things that you mentioned, like line moves, coaching moves, organizational moves, these things I believe are undersung or sometimes flat out ignored. So you already spoke to their importance, so you probably agree. I see you nodding. Which ones stood out to you? Did any stand out to you maybe more so than others? I'm still picking up on this stuff as we go.
Yeah, there's certainly a couple big ones for sure. Like Brian Dable comes to mind right away. Like if you followed the New York Giants over the past couple of years, they've been one of the worst offenses in the league in each of the past two seasons, like 28th, 29th. Can't get anything done on the ground, can't get anything done through the air. Of course, Saquon suffered a couple injuries. The offensive line hasn't been great. We can all make so many excuses about Daniel Jones, but last year there was a point in the season where they were like on their own 3rd and 8, and they ran like a quarterback sneak. It looked like a goal line play. And it's like, what the heck is happening there, right? So you bring in a guy like Brian Dable, who did wonders with Josh Allen, who's a great play caller. They do have some weapons inside the offense. They draft Wan'Dale Robinson, but Kadarius Toney's a nice little piece. The offensive line is better. I thought they had a good, strong draft, at least the first couple rounds. I really liked their first few picks. Offensively, get an edge rusher and, get somebody to help protect Daniel Jones and, maybe create some space for Saquon Barkley in there as well. So I like the addition of Brian Dable. I think it's huge. I don't think he's going to be able to turn Daniel Jones into Josh Allen. He probably has one foot out the door, but it's, they didn't get any touchdowns from any of their wide receivers really last year. Dante Pettis had a touchdown. I think John Ross had a touchdown. Like Kenny Golladay had 0 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So they paid that big contract for him. He averaged like 37 yards per game or something silly like that. So that's probably one of the bigger ones for me. Brian Dable going to New York. I like Josh McDaniels going to the Raiders as well. I think it's going to be I don't want to say too much here that it's going to be like the 2007 undefeated Pats season that they had, but there's a couple similar pieces. Now, Derek Carr is not going to be Tom Brady. Devontae Adams is not going to be Randy Moss, and Hunter Renfrow is not going to be Wes Welker, but I think the offense will run very similar to how the offense ran in those days. And last time we saw McDaniels as a head coach, he he's pretty young in the league. I mean, he did some things with Team Tebow. They won some games. It's exciting. He wanted to leave the Pats and go to the Colts a few years ago. Remember that? And he's just like, all of a sudden one day he's like, nah, I don't want to be the coach anymore, even though they had like a verbal agreement. So maybe he's done, like he's matured a little bit, but he did some great things last year with Mac Jones. Nobody thought Mac Jones would be the best rookie quarterback in the NFL last year. And he was. He was the best rookie quarterback in the NFL. He kind of cooled off towards the end of last season, but he was accurate. Play calling's fine. So I like that addition as well. A couple other ones like Nathaniel Hackett going over to Denver. I think they have the tight end coach from Green Bay as the offensive coordinator in there as well. So it could be a very similar Green Bay offense. And some reports are going to cater to Russell Wilson. Of course, they're going to cater to Russell Wilson. Some of these offseason reports are jokes, right? Like, oh, the Broncos are going to cater to Russell Wilson. They're going to build the offense around Russell Wilson. Who would have thought that they would do something like that? They made all these trades and they got Russell Wilson. Of course, they're going to cater their offense around a Super Bowl champion in Russell Wilson, but you can see some screens there that they ran a lot in Green Bay. A couple others. Doug Peterson, that one may just go over the radar. I'm not really thinking about it because it's Jacksonville, but the Jags were a bloody mess last year. They were atrocious. Urban Meyer, it took a while for Urban Meyer to realize like Carlos Hyde is not the Carlos Hyde that he had in Ohio State, that he had James Robinson to give him the ball. There's clearly a lot of frustrations with that squad. Doug Peterson did wonders in Philly with Nick Foles, of course, when they won the Super Bowl, but also Carson Wentz has struggled over the past few years. Carson Wentz's best season with Doug Peterson that year that they won the Super Bowl, and he actually had MVP votes despite not finishing the season due to a blown knee. So I like that addition. Peterson's going to, I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to be unbelievable this year, but he's going to take steps forward. He's a former quarterback in the league. He's been around really good coaches in the NFL. So I think that move is really great for the Jags organization and great for Trevor Lawrence. And then one more for you, Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell leaving LA, offensive coordinator with the Rams last year, going to Minnesota. Minnesota has been led by a defensive-minded coach in Zimmer over the past couple of seasons. Their defense hasn't even really been all that good over the past couple of years. A lot of people are saying that Justin Jefferson will have the Cooper Kupp role. You know who has a Cooper Kupp role? Cooper Kupp. I think like the offense could run pretty similar, though. They ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in LA last year, the most out of any team. So over the years, it's just been like Adam Thielen, Diggs and Thielen. Who's that third wide receiver? And then the past couple of years have been Thielen, Jefferson. KJ Osborne could show up this year, run more 3 wide receiver sets, get on the field a little bit more. I believe they ran like 86% of the time last year in LA. I know a lot of it was Sean McVay, but having an offensive-minded coach in Minnesota, I think will not only Jefferson's 3,000 yards in 2 years in the NFL. He's been unbelievable. Thielen's been a touchdown machine, but you could see guys like KJ Osborne, Irv Smith get sprinkled in the offense a little bit more. Maybe both running backs. All we know is when Dalvin Cook is healthy, it's all Dalvin Cook. And when he's not healthy, it's all Alexander Madison. Who knows? Maybe it'd be 70-30 this year. Maybe they'll sprinkle a little bit more Madison because he's a pretty good back too. So those are the coaching changes that really stand out to me. I know they have a new regime in Chicago. That's got to be wonders for Justin Fields and company, even though they're lacking a ton of weapons in that offense.
Man, that was a really excellent job, really comprehensive stuff. And like I said, I was kind of hanging on the edge of my chair because that's really what matters right now. If you're involved with fantasy football at all, it's probably best ball or right. It's usually not. It's really not fab time yet. We're going to get into that in just a second. I guess that'll be kind of the segue. But just to put the bow on what you said about those teams, I think what I hadn't realized until, again, you talk to smart people. That's why I do it. A lot of the very bad teams kind of made a big change. And it's funny, bad teams make it. They don't always make changes, okay? I'm a Jets fan. We know about bad teams that try and stay. Well, you know what's funny? Again, I do that half tongue in cheek because as fans, we want chemistry and continuity. I believe they're very important. I think the worst thing you could do in football, very similar to trading stocks, is system hop. It's like the worst thing you could do. All right, this is what I'm going to do, and you don't even give it a chance to mature, and you end up changing it to something else. Before you know it, you're kind of spinning yourself around into circles. So what does that mean, Chris? It's really important to make the right decision, right? Make the right decision. And once you believe in it, then you can kind of go for it. So it's going to be interesting to see if they made the right decision. A lot of the coaches you mentioned have track record, and even more specifically, track record in that, I don't want to say field like it's football, but even more specifically, catering to a mobile quarterback, these kind of things that I think matter when it comes to schematics and stuff like that. And I wonder right off the bat if they're those totals, those teams' futures are being shorted. Again, something we'll get to in a little bit. That's a tease. While we're teasing you, please press the cartoon thumb button below me, rate, review, and subscribe. This is on. Yeah, I don't do a great job promoting. I've always been like I'm more steak than sizzle. Yeah. Surprise. But I'm just saying, I'm like, oh, if your work is really great, it'll shine through. But at the end of the day, they're like, how many cartoon fingers do you get? I don't know how many do you get. Well, I didn't get enough. I didn't get enough cartoon
I don't
fingers.
get a lot.
No.
I don't get a lot either.
No, listen,
you got to say it. Mayo does such a good job of smash that like button.
Yeah. Exactly. He's great.
But
he's great.
If you're going to hang out. So Big John's giving you content all the time. Do him a solid. Smash.
We're adding value. Hopefully, we just added value with all those moves. Though, please rate, review, and subscribe. This is on the fantasy football picks and bets. And again, hat tip to Patty Mayo. Allowed us just to put some extra content in here. I think my spin's always going to be a little bit unique. And if anything, I just like to leave people thinking when I'm doing the learning, like we're doing here. That's great. I'm learning with people. I'm very open about my process, and you are as well. One of the reasons you and I get along so well.
Dude, the offseason was crazy this year.
It's well, here we go. Let's get into just that.
My goodness,
let's get into just that because of the moves, right? The first thing we want to do is kind of think to capitalize on those moves. It makes a lot of sense. So when we get to the end, what does your portfolio look like? So I mentioned it being a little bit early for Fab, which I do defend, but do you think there is a place for Fab? Are you playing Fab because of capitalizing on early ADP values, let's say?
Yeah, I play with Fab. I do like to play with Fab. I think everybody should, honestly. It's the fairest way, and I think that's what you want to have come fantasy football.
Now you're playing already?
Yeah, no, now I haven't done any season-long drafts.
Okay.
No.
That's right.
But I will play Fab. Yeah, no, all my drafts that I've done some best ball at a cut line over at NFFC. I've done some best ball drafts as well, and some of my keeper and dynasty leagues. I've already done rookie drafts, and then next week I'll do another rookie draft here. It'll be like a 4-round. It's like a 15-year dynasty league. It's like a 33-man roster IDP in there as well. So we'll draft probably like 6 or 7 rounds once we get into some defensive players in there. But I'm old school. I still love the season-long stuff. I will play in like double-digit season-long leagues. I'm in a bunch of keeper leagues, and every year I always say I'm going to cut back in leagues, and then there's one more. Jake's got his flex, and then there's another one. Oh, you join this one, Independence Day draft. I have lied. I've done a couple. I did one season-long Independence Day draft on SiriusXM. Howard Bender ran it. I'm like the lone random Canadian in that draft, but I love it. It's like tight end premium, which is really different to think about when you see 10 tight ends go off the board within the first 2.5 rounds. It's really like, oh my goodness. But I am right now it's best ball. I do love best ball. I like the idea of like drafting and just forget about it and just kind of let it, pile up. And you could really find there's pros and cons, right, about drafting right now. I think best ball, you can get away with it. You can make a lot of cases for people in best ball. You can find edges and value right now before these players that you think could be good in new rules or rookies that you think could be okay. Like, for example, if you're sitting there in a draft right now and you're deciding between Sky Moore or MVS, you're like, okay, which way do I go? I think Sky Moore, but which way do I go? You make that decision. If we get into training camp here a month from now when you're drafting and Sky Moore's had a really nice rapport with Patrick Mahomes, you're hearing reports all the time. Maybe he pops off in a preseason game or two. The guy just skyrockets up the board. But if you feel like he would be the guy anyways, you can certainly find these values right now. But if you're playing, season long, I would wait it out as long as you can, just to kind of avoid the injuries. I think that's the biggest thing for me. But there's certainly a lot of values in best ball, but I'm playing everything. Guillotine League as well.
I like
Brad Ziegler, former big leaguer Ziegler. Yeah. Him and I used to work together with Jake Seeley. We had our own podcast over at The Athletic, and he runs one with a couple former baseball league players. I forget some of the names that are in it now, but it's super fun. If you come last for the week, you're done. You're just out. But basically, you just don't want to come last, and you move on. And then that person who comes last week 1, it's kind of a crapshoot to start.
Right.
Whoever comes last week 1 is just done, and everybody can bid on those players for that waiver wire heading into week 2. You bid on those players that are dropped. My strategy for that is I'd like to get the stars because I want to advance, and then I'll figure it out. There's always going to be some good players that are available on the waiver wire, but you do have to look ahead at the schedule a little bit, see week 1, week 2, get some guys that have some really strong floors, and just hopefully that you could, build a more balanced team throughout the season with players that are on the waiver wire.
How about the specifics? Would you prefer waiver to fab? I came up CBS style waiver. As I get older, I think
Yeah.
fab is clearly. I'm
I
not sure
think
if there is
Fab's the way
an
to
argument.
go.
Yeah, fab. I mean, fab is way more fair. I'm not sure there's an
It
argument
is.
for that.
It is. And it took
I'm
one
not
of my
sure,
home
yeah.
leagues. It took a little bit for the people in my league to kind of warm up to it. They're like, fab, more money, budget. I don't know how much to spend. People are blowing their load after
Yeah,
week
yeah,
one, week
yeah.
two. I understand that, but heck, people did it last year with Elijah Mitchell. A lot of sharp people did it with Elijah Mitchell. They spent 100% of their fab after week 2 or after week 1 when Sermon or Raheem Mostert went down, and Sermon never really had a chance, but Raheem Mostert went down, everyone was like Elijah Mitchell. But I think it's fair for everybody. It's fun. It's cool. It's really nice to see the bids the next day as well. You could have that fun conversation with people in your league mates. Oh, I needed $1 more to get this guy. And
But
I just think
that's a
it's better.
competition, right? That's
It
a
is,
competition.
yeah.
Yeah. I like that. So how about I'm just now getting introduced to Superflex. Now I was a fantasy football junkie back in the day. Like I have those receipts. I got away from it with baseball, and when I reintroduced to football, it was more DFS and betting and prop betting.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of, again, it's very easy to sour on fantasy football. I think one of the mistakes I made was starting too early. And if you sink a ton of money into some early leagues and you lose that first round pick before the season starts, again, that's why I just think best ball exists.
Right, exactly.
Especially if you're playing big money to kind of wait. What about Superflex? I mean, I'm hearing about this now. I ended up joining one, a best ball. I don't know if I really liked it. It just seemed like a quarterback rush at the front door. Everybody rushes for quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Do you like that? And how about just finish off all the rest of the stuff, like kickers and defense, and then we'll move past. But I'm just curious on you with fantasy formatting.
Yes. So I do like Superflex. I think it's interesting. For me, I'm just like I love sports so much, and I love digging deep into things. So I find it if you're playing in a single quarterback league with like 10 of your buddies or 12 people, there's really good quarterbacks on the waiver wire, and sometimes you have to make those tough decisions, and that's part of it as well. To make that tough decision, I mean, you could have. Geez, I remember last year I had Joe Burrow and maybe Kyler on one squad because Burrow was hanging around the waiver wire. And then all of a sudden you have to make those tough decisions. And, you can, people don't like to make those decisions. It's like, I got 2 quarterbacks. There's good ones on the waiver wire. I don't really like to make that. I make the wrong call. I like Superflex because you get to kind of get everybody in there. Like you get those decent quarterbacks that are on the waiver wire that you could also play on your teams as well. But you are right. It is a different draft. It is quarterback heavy. You don't have to do it, though. You can go the other way, right? Zig. You can go the other way. If those first 10 quarterbacks are off the board in the first couple rounds and you don't have one of them, I don't think it's the end of the world. You could have a really strong running back, a really strong wide receiver. There's value at the quarterback position outside the top 10, and guys like Lance and Fields and Aaron Rodgers is going outside the top 10. Yeah, I'm not a huge on Rodgers, but he's going outside the top 10. I love Derek Carr this year. So there's a lot of value. I don't mind Superflex. It is different. I think I like the traditional way of drafting. Start one quarterback, start one tight end. But I understand why people are playing more Superflex, playing tight end premium, just to kind of get a larger pool, like you in baseball. Like, why not have a draft with 40 rounds so we can draft bench players or platoon guys that could fall into bigger roles. That's kind of how I've always been. My fantasy hockey leagues are deeper than any buddies that I ever play in. I like to dig deep and have other random statistics that are included in it. I would eliminate kickers. I'm with Jake. I think it's pretty random. I don't like to have my week decided on a kicker. I just think it honestly is pretty fluky. You could look into it all you want. Say, okay, I'm going to draft a kicker on a team like I don't know, Zach Taylor's not all that aggressive inside the red zone. Maybe I'm going to draft McPherson. Everyone loves McPherson now because of the show that he had last year in the playoffs. But you could look into it like that. Tough divisions is going to be, a defensive grind, offensive grind. I'm going to draft a kicker inside a dome or things like that. But I would like to eliminate them. But I like defenses. I think there's certainly a more of a strategy when it comes to drafting a defense in a special team. I'm out on the kicker. Get rid of them.
I have this Cheshire Cat smile on my face because when I was playing season long and we were playing with kickers, like, yes, it is you're not wrong. The math backs it up. It's fluky. But there would always be a kicker or two, depending on your format. Maybe it was mine. I was in leagues that rewarded for longer kicks, right? So if you're getting you're getting right 3 for a kick, let's say you're getting bonus 3 for 50s. You would, I mean, I would, or I thought short players at the time were getting. At one point, it was Janikowski, right? Seabass, and and then it was Greg Zuerlein for a little while before he was Legatron kind of went south. There was a couple years he was awesome. Then it was Justin Tucker. So I can tell you, I remember these guys. They stick with you because they're really become part of your draft plan. I only think a few of them stick out. So to that point, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of silly. I like some of what I've seen where you could choose the team kind of kicking. It's not just a kicker. I guess
NFFC is pretty cool. I do like that. The NFFC cut line draft I did, you can just draft a team, which, at that point you could, the battles are won, injuries are won. You can just have
at least no zeros, right? Exactly.
Yeah, at least no zeros.
Yeah. Okay. Enough kicking. That was crazy.
Years ago, enough kicking. But I will say this: years ago, when I worked with Pat at Fantasy Sports Network, we had a guy come in. He was more of a comedian, and we did a show together. It was mostly just him kind of, picking my brain and other people's brains, and just wanted to have some fun. And he started up a 3 kicker league. Where you had to start 3 kickers.
Yes.
Think about it. There's like 10 people in the league, and we had people who had like 5 kickers on one squad. Other people don't even have 3 kickers to roll out. I tell you what, ridiculous. It was a very interesting draft.
Stop.
Like 15 kickers went off the board in the first 50 picks.
Okay. Let's. Cool. If anyone that survived the 3 kicker talk is definitely a fan, so thank you all. You get out of here, Chris. Come on, there for you, baby. All right. Enough of the season-long stuff because again, I think that needs to be revisited. It's important to know where you want to be slotted, but where the love right now is best ball. I'm drafting these things around the clock. DraftKings has a cool product. There's a couple other ones. They're all pretty similar. I actually did just a preliminary kind of ADP study. They were all really, really quick. And I would just point to people that are trying to get something from this. I don't think there's much there. I really don't. I don't think there's anything in trying to capitalize on a site-to-site difference in ADP of 10 when my error bar on ADP is 10 anyway. You know what I mean? Like I tend to draft on the ends when I have a choice. I tend to pull a lot of ends. I don't know if that's lucky. Or not. I guess I've gotten an uncanny amount of ones so far. I mean, it's just right. You expect to get 1 out of 12. So they're coming like every single draft is number 1. That I've even diversified on my number 1 pick, which is usually strange. Not something you do. You don't get enough of it. But to that point, ADP to me, Chris. We've been there, man. I've heard this song before. I really do not. I do not care about ADP almost at all. Other than to fade it, right? To use it to anticipate the moves of the rubes in order to kind of counterpunch that. So before that, I think that's a good topic. Would you speak to ADP in general, just quick?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly, man. You could use it as a guideline if you want, but don't let it be everything for you. Don't if you like a guy, I see this all the time. And even sometimes I could fall into that trap as well. Like I like a guy in the 5th round and he's on average going in the 7th round, 6th round. And I'm like, oh, maybe I can get him in the next round. Maybe this is reach. And I don't get the guy that I want. Why? Because of the ADP. And I feel like maybe I look silly taking this guy, or I think like he's not going to return value at that point. I think you throw ADP really out the window. You draft guys that you want. You go in with a strategy, have your own rankings, your own projections. It's like a very key to have that as well. But also just draft guys that you want to have. It's okay. This whole ADP thing, especially early on in the season when you're doing best ball all the time, it's kind of all over the place, man. Guys are in one draft going much earlier than the average draft, and that's okay. I think it's perfectly fine. I think in best ball too, you get your quarterback, you get your stacks. It's not everything. I don't go into the draft and say oh, I got to have a Bengals stack here, or I got to have a Raiders stack. You can let things fall to you in the draft fall to you. But I think ultimately ADP is just in all sports. It is just overblown, man. It's just too much. And I'm not looking too far ahead either into I get it. Maybe I'm maybe I'm not sharp enough for that. Like
No,
week
wait, it's
15,
me and
16,
you. Go
17.
ahead, say it.
I'm not
Say
really
it.
looking ahead
Say
too
it.
much. I'm
Say it.
taking a peek. I
Say it.
see who's playing who, but my goodness, you got to get there. You
I'll
have
say
to
it.
get
I'll
there.
say it. I'll say it. Drafting for week 17 is
It's
so
so silly.
stupid. It's
It is
so
so silly.
stupid.
So much
Please,
can change.
please, somebody, will the week 17 drafter, please, please, just give me the standings. Can I have the standings? Do you have the injury report? Perhaps the weather. Just stop it. We know defenses have this huge year-over-year turnover rate. Again, I've done a bit of this work before. Once you get like a 4 or 5 game sample for a defense, that's really what you want to be worrying about. We don't know where these defenses are necessarily going to be. The injuries, there's still trades. It just, I will go to the point of if one of your centerpiece stacks, is formed already and you're at the end of a draft, I guess like looking to maybe a late pair if it works. Like everything has to fit. Everything has to fit.
Everything has to fall into place.
But it was funny because I don't know if this is necessarily a direct counter to what I'm about to say, but the reason I ignore ADP is because of the very limited roster spots. So one of the reasons that everyone hates best ball is one of the reasons I really like it. It's a very difficult puzzle. And if you draft a bunch of these, you're going to have a certain percentage of them that are burned to injury. That's just what it is. There aren't enough spaces to recoup X amount of injuries. Now, I know it's very frustrating, but you also have to remember kind of zero-sum games. So the leagues that you didn't lose those players, someone else did, right? And there's your advantage. So I think that means best ball should be played. I don't mean to say mass injury. You don't need 150, but I don't think you should be playing 1. I think you should be playing 5 or playing 10, even if it's like once a month. Now, to the strict roster management, this is where I really want to get out of you. I forgot it in the notes, but this is really important stuff for people because I have been noticing that again, you mentioned zig and zagging, and I don't know if I'm just a stupid baseball guy. Maybe this first time around I will be, but I've been noticing where everyone's like 0 RB, I'm 0 wide receiver. Chris, the reason is the roster spaces are limited, and I find or feel at least if I get a really good quarterback and or tight end, I don't need 3 of them. I only need 2 of them. Like that's how simple it is for me. If I have Josh Allen, I'm going to try and get a guy like you mentioned, like Fields later on, maybe Zach Wilson, and call it a day. That roster spot is almost priceless to me. Whereas if you start with Cousins, who I get the Cousins bull case. I get it. But if you get Cousins, I don't know if you can go Cousins and Zach Wilson and hope to call it a day. I don't know if there are enough spike weeks in there to win it all, right? You have to win it all. You have to win it all. Maybe Fields has some good spike cases, but again, with Cousins, I just think you need a third. Same for tight end. Outside of, I'm not a big Kelsey guy at the price. I really like Andrews. I do really like Pitts. I'm afraid outside of those guys, again, I think you need 3 tight ends. People are really big on like Albert even guys like Dalton Schultz. I mean, if you compare Schultz with Cole Kmet later on and end up with very little, I know people hate to hear that, but it's the fact. If you just get a very standard 3 for 36 in a score, 4 for 27 no score, 3 for 51 no score, right? It's very easy to see Dalton Schultz falling to the back of the tight end 1 conversation just out of regression. Again, I don't like the Cowboys. I think they're a good offense, but a lot of mouths to feed. So now with me going with all of that, I'm going to hit mute. I just want you to go because there's a lot there. Because I want you to speak to the rostership, it being so kind of narrow and how you deal with it. I said mine. Again, might not be right or wrong, just different. How do you approach that? Do you think that answer I gave is sharp, let's say?
I do actually. I think we're on the same page. I'm seeing, people will share their teams all the time, and it's a lot of talk that everyone wants that alpha wideout. And I understand, I get it. Like, I mean, if you get your hands on a Cooper Kupp, a Justin Jefferson, I mean, good for you, Jamar Chase. I think that's all fantastic. But I guess it's just because I don't love a lot of running backs. Like, I like to get the running backs. I think you have to have a bell cow. You have to have 2 stud running backs. You have to. You can make a case for all these other guys going outside the top 30 or 40, like, could fall into a larger role or needs an injury. Like, you do have to have some luck on your side, certainly. Obviously, you do have to have that. But I just think the wide receiver position has been so deep for years that you could start off with, like you said, a stud tight end. I'm not huge on Kelsey either. I like Andrews. I like Pitts. I may like Dalton Schultz a little bit more than you, but I like the idea of kind of starting with, I don't have too many drafts where I have more than 4 running backs, 4 or 5 running backs, but I tell you what, those 2 of those 4 better be like bell cow backs to me, or like leads, guys that are going to stay on the field as much as possible. They're not going to get off the field like Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson could get goal line carries taken away from him, the new running back in town, and Robinson. We know that J.D. McKissick was brought back. He's been I think he's got the 4th most catches among running backs over the last 3 years. He had 80 catches 2 years ago. He's 2-minute drill guy.
Yep.
He's 3rd down guy. I don't like to mess around with that. I'm trying to shoot for upside with running backs. So I want to get a bell cow back in my first round or my second round. There's some value on Saquon this year. There's some questions around Kamara, but those are guys that I think are falling a little bit. Cam Akers, I want to get a guy that's on the field. So I am kind of maybe the opposite of what the normal is in terms of like 0 RB. I'd like to get a couple. I'd like to get a couple studs, and then anywhere from like rounds 3 to 8 or 9. I mean, there's values this year on Allen Robinson and I think
you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
That's it.
I think people try and you mentioned it before, Chris. People try and predetermine the strategy and fit it where the board is unique every year, and we're dealing with a game, right? The game is changing towards more passing, which again just lends itself.
It is.
And more committees. So more running back committees paired with more passing. And we have people, again, very sharp. I'm not looking to knock them. But again, I will platform these people. We can argue this out. Putting these best ball rosters up without a week 1 starting running back. And I'm failing to see. You're not going to win.
You're not going to win that way. You got to win. You have
I don't
to
understand
win it all.
You're not going to come out of the box fast. Even if I've seen it, Alexander Madison is the number 1. Like, you just can't. I don't think you could do that.
It's not going to work out.
I just don't think it could work for you.
You need so many things to break your way, John.
Immediately break your way, and then stick.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
We talk ADP. We did chat ADP and like value and things like that, and not like, being too serious inside the ADP. But ultimately, like, you want to be able to. I think you need to have a bell cow. You can't just say, "Oh, well, I like where Alexander Madison's going," or I don't believe in CH and I like where Ronald Jones is going. Like, these guys can't be your RB1. They just can't.
No, they don't catch balls either. Ronald.
Yeah, and exactly. So many things have to fall your way. Drafting like that.
Let me ask you, where does that end? Where does it end for you? You mentioned the very end of my personal tier. One of the guys I was very high on is now a market darling, and ETN is like flying. I've seen him going like the 2nd or 3rd round. Now it's a bit rich for me. You mentioned Cam Akers, somebody that I kind of had pegged as maybe is kind of like the last guy I'd be comfortable. I really want him as my 2, frankly, Chris. I don't know if I want him as my 1, but he's certainly the last guy I think of as being a kind of a 1. How about you? Could you draw up that shelf for us?
Yeah, I think Akers is a 1. I really do. I know he wasn't efficient last year when he came back from the Achilles injury, but all the defenses that he faced were all top 10 defenses. I mean, he faced San Fran, I think, twice. Believe it or not, the Bengals were a top 10 run defense. He faced the Bucs, so he went up against some pretty stiff competition. I think it was just very telling that Sean McVay was willing to give him a ton of touches and a ton of work. Like, so I view him as like a guy, and Darrell Henderson's he's like soft tissue issues all the time with this guy. So I feel like he certainly is a 1. That's probably the cutoff. I mean, Jones, I like Jones, even though he's going to have a bit of a split backfield. I still think he's going to catch a lot of balls in the backfield. Fournette, I know he's checking in overweight, but he's still the guy there. He's a veteran back. He's never been like a slim dude anyways. I think he can get to where he needs to be. Chubb, Kamara, Akers. Connor's not going to catch a ton of passes into the backfield, but he'll catch enough. Yeah, ETN has really driven up boards. I think Breece Hall is fine too with your Jets. I mean, I think he could be.
Didn't we hear this song about Michael Carter? Didn't we do this last year with Michael Carter? He was going top 100. I remember me and Nelson were flying all over Michael Carter. He even looked good at points. And now what? I'm having trouble filling in that blank because he's still being drafted. He's still healthy. He's still projected for carries and such. Are we discarding him wholly? Do you need to draft him? And you know what? How about this? Take that away with the next thing I think that's an important best ball strategy, Chris, would be pairing. So talk to me about the Jets backfield and then pairing.
Yeah, I Carter's really good. Like, I do like him, but I mean, they drafted Breece Hall. I mean, didn't they move up 2 picks? Just 2 picks to make sure that they had this guy?
I don't know
That's
anything about college football. I have no
it's
idea.
it's
I
very
have the worst
telling.
idea.
I think they moved up 2 picks, dude. Just 2 picks to get this guy in Breece Hall. So they clearly wanted him.
Right.
They wanted him in that backfield. He could be a bell cow. I think Carter's just, honestly, I think we kind of pour one out for him. It's like another one of those guys that you're just drafting. Like, you need an injury to kind of happen for him to fall into a larger workload. But yeah, I think Hall is going to be the lead. I think, we will see Carter sprinkled in a little bit. Maybe he gets like 4 or 5 carries. Maybe he gets 6 or 7 off the hop, and it's just mostly Breece Hall eventually throughout the year, and sprinkle on a little Carter on third down roll. But yeah, stacks are important. There's a couple other backs I do want to throw out.
Go.
That could be valuable. I know that Miles Sanders had 0 touchdowns last year, and I know that everybody's in on Javonte Williams, but those are 2 backs too. Like, if you decide that you do want to avoid running backs, or maybe you just get 1 or 2 within your first 6 to 8 picks, Sanders and Gordon are 2 guys that I've seen fall in between round 8 and round 10, where, I mean, nobody ran the ball better than Philadelphia last year. Of course, it was a lot of Jalen Hurts, but that offensive line is still one of the better ones. And, he's on the end of a contract. They're not going to bring him back. I think they're actually going to give him a ton of carries. And then Denver, I think it was really telling for me. I like Javonte Williams just like everybody else. But if you look at last year's stats, they were dead split in terms of carries. They had the exact same amount of carries, exact same amount of fantasy points per game. A little bit more target usage and catches for Javonte, but a little bit more goal line usage for Melvin Gordon. I don't think he's going anywhere. They brought him back for a reason. You talked earlier about committees across the league. We're seeing a lot of that. So I know it's not a sexy name, but it's a guy that I don't think will go anywhere, and is a guy that could, for your RB3 or RB4, they both finished as like top 20 running backs last year. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened either. Stacks is huge. It's key. I think you need to stack. I think you really do. I don't think it's the end of the world, but you got to have some sort of stacks. You want to maximize your upside. There's a lot of cheap stacks out there. I just mentioned.
Who do you like? Who do you like any in the back? Anybody?
I like the Raiders. I really like the Raiders this year as an interesting stack. I think Derek Carr has been anywhere over the past few years. He's been around quarterback 14. He's cheap. He's accurate. He's a few years removed now from having MVP votes. Remember, had Crabtree and Cooper along his sides, and now I mentioned McDaniels. I think is a plus for Carr.
Oh, definitely.
You get an alpha in there, and Devontae Adams, who he's very familiar with. I think in 2 years of college, they had 87 combined.
Oh, they went bananas.
Together.
Yeah. Oh,
went bananas. You got Hunter Renfrow inside the slot, who's a mismatched, terrific route runner. We saw him towards the end of last season. He's gonna be so good. Darren Waller's a mismatch too. The defense is okay. The pass rush is good. They still have some holes in their secondary. Think about the division that they're going to play in. Think about the game totals, dude. That's going to, when they play the Chiefs twice a year, the Chargers twice a year, the Broncos, those game totals are going to be like 50. You're going to see lots of points between those in those games. There's going to be lots of shootouts. The Raiders are cheap. You get your hands on Adams. You could get your hands on Adams. He's going to end of first, early second.
He's cheap too. Yeah, he's cheap.
He's cheap. You could, if you wanted to go Waller, sure, you get that edge on tight end. But Hunter Renfrow in there as well, and then you can get Derek Carr. So,
how about this, Chris? This is perfect.
Rolling with.
This is perfect because the Raiders are actually a very good example of this. Now, again, we're not really breaking any news with stacks, but here's where the thinking is. I have heard people say that you can kind of go too far with it. The mega stack, the super duper triple stack, whatever you're going to call it. Do you think that we go too far? I'm not necessarily planting my flag that you go too far. But I have, as I've been drafting, and I'm actively drafting kind of nonstop, I've been backing away from that 4 or 5 piece stack and getting more into like mini kind of correlations. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if I have the 3 quarterbacks, so I mentioned maybe having 3 QBs, maybe having 3 guys that are all throwing passes to somebody, and like it's actually, you can actually do it. If you can do it with the Jets because Elijah Moore kind of goes later. I see him as a big draft value. And then Garrett Davis is there. And Corey Davis is like forgotten. And so is Zach Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
So that's totally late. You mentioned Justin Fields. I am so high on Justin Fields. Again, if I step on the rake, it'll be because I watch the games more than do the spreadsheets, which is funny, right? Because I'm Mr. Spreadsheet when it comes to baseball. I'm like, people say it's too much almost. And football, I'm like, dude, I have them. I have the stats. And I find I don't care about them almost whatsoever. If you watched Fields, God, I draft ballers, bro. How stupid is that? Like, what kind of caveman analysis? But if you watched Justin Fields evolve and the play calling move with him, again, they had their struggles. The end of that season, you were like, yo, this guy. I actually thought, watching it, he was going to be the hot commodity this draft season. It has not.
It's not. You know who it is? You know who everyone wants? Everyone wants Trey Lance. Everyone wants Trey Lance, but like, what
With
could
good
be
reason,
the
I
difference
think. But we haven't seen it.
They're exactly. Play calling is going to be better in San Fran. They have like yak monsters over there, and Kittle and Debo and Ayuk. I understand that, but also Fields, and maybe I was going to get into him actually a little bit later on as a future, but we could just dive into him now.
Yeah, because we're getting to the hour anyway, so it's fine.
I feel like there's a couple stacks I have written down here that are cheap, and they are one. I mean, Justin Fields averaged 50, I think 51, in between 51 57 rushing yards per game over the last 7 games. You remember his first start? I think it was against Cleveland. He was sacked like 9 times. They didn't run one run design. Nobody in motion. They couldn't play to his strengths. See you later, Matt Nagy. Goodbye. And then they started to play to his strengths a little bit. You got Darnell Mooney, who's going to get 140 plus targets. Is like
one of my favorite values.
Cole Kmet. I know a lot of people are in on Cole Kmet, but I have him as a top 10 tight end. I would much rather have him than taking the price and the cost on TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert.
Agreed.
Zach Ertz. I'd give me Cole Kmet as a guy who finished inside the top 12 among tight ends in targets, catches, and yards. Guess what? He had 0 touchdowns. That stuff is going to change this year for Cole Kmet. Into year 3, no Jimmy Graham, the number 2 option in the passing game. Defense is not great. Justin Fields is going to build a rapport with him. And you saw towards the end of last season, I think he had 12 catches in his first 6 games. And his last like 6 or 7, he like tripled that. So he was really starting to carve out a role. That's a cheap stack that you can get behind. You get the rushing upside with Fields. Maybe a couple touchdowns, deep ball with Mooney. Maybe Komet's in there.
He's going to move up. He has to move up, right?
He
has to.
One of two players with 60 catches and 0 touchdowns. The other one was Laghezza Shenault. We're going to see Cole Kmet get touchdowns this year. I don't know about Laghezza. We're certainly going to see Cole Kmet.
Laghezza drop.
But I'm with you. I think what you said is awesome. A lot of people are willing to just go, oh, I got a Bengals stack, and I don't know if you can do Bengals and Bills, but I got a Bengals stack, and I got a Buck stack or something. Like, I got mega stacks. I think it's better to have 3. Like have 3 stacks, have a quarterback.
You know what's funny that you mentioned that?
Or a tight end, or
I actually managed to put together in it because they were minis, like really good teams too. KC and Tampa Bay with Chicago, and that was the thing that triggered it. So
Chicago's gonna be a game changer for you.
I don't really like Kelsey, so I skipped on Kelsey, but I managed to get Mahomes, Allaire, Sky Moore. Right, so like there's a little correlation there. Mahomes can do it with those guys or without them, right? Because Brady is a QB too. He's going later. Evans I got up front before Mahomes, so that one went. Evans was the wide receiver 1 that I got with the later QB. Mahomes was the earlier QB that I got with more and more forgotten pieces. Then Fields was the 3rd QB that really no one wanted with Mooney in the middle. Yeah. And then I went to the back end and I have Byron Pringle on that one as well. So you kind of have this
favorite late round target.
It's like this ding, 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 ding. It's like I looked at this team, and I hate to roster bait because it's like the worst thing you do. But I looked at it, and this is what I want to get. And this is really all that I was hoping to get from you, Chris, because, again, no one cares about some of the stuff but the feathers we leave with them. You look at it and you say, ADP be damned. Every week I'm going in with Brady to Evans to Tyler Johnson. I'm going in with Pat Mahomes to Allaire to Sky Moore. I'm going in with Justin Fields to Darnell Mooney to Byron Pringle every single week. Every week. That's how you do it, rather than it wasn't pick on you at all, because I make this. I thought, again, I shouldn't be asserting it's a mistake, but I did the super stacks and went back and said, on the week the Raiders score 45, I probably have the tits. But on the regular weeks, even with a 28-point output, you might not get all of that. Right. And if you drafted Waller, you sacrificed. And if you drafted Adams and Renfro, especially Renfro, he's an earlier 2. Right. So you see where I'm going with this, the mega stack?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's I think a lot of people are more willing to, like, if they started off that stack that you were talking about with like Tampa and KC, they'd be more like, oh, I got to get Russell Gage, I got to get MVS too.
Yes, and I kind of backed away.
All of those guys, but to have that 3rd team in there, that value team like the Raiders, like the Bears.
Jets are a good
Detroit
one.
too. Jets,
I think Detroit is an
interesting one as well. Jared Goff, I know it's Jared Goff, but he has supported 2 top 10 wide receivers before in the past. I know he had McVay with him, but Woods and Kupp. But I really like, I know we may not see Jameson Williams for some time, but
I'm not drafting him. He's in trouble, right? I have him on the no draft list.
Yeah, I would put him on the no draft list.
Yeah. Okay.
I would put him on the no draft list because we may not even see him till week 8. But you get Hawkinson in there, who I did kind of crap on over a little bit, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hawkinson, you could just get one of those two, or maybe a DJ Chark in there, or maybe you have Swift, and all of a sudden Goff, like Swift's going to catch 50 plus passes in that backfield. He may have a couple of receiving touchdowns. Goff is not costing you anything. How about the Saints? How about the value? There's a lot of question marks with the Saints, and warranted. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, Jameis Winston. Like, that's a cheap stack that you have as well towards the end of your draft. And you having that third team in there, I think, is a little bit more beneficial than having like 2 mega stacks.
Love that. Oh, and you know what's funny? You even mentioned, and I think it's important, right? Again, like you said, Chris, something that you're so very good at, being flexible, being malleable, trying to be proactive opposed to reactive, and not being married to these stacks. But a guy like, I'm going to have to do it, Olave, whoa, that is my boy. That is my absolute boy. This draft season, complete to me. I had mentioned mispriced. We ended up handling it within. Again, I had a feeling that I would just do the Garfield kind of Heathcliff cloud, which is fine because, again, that's what matters at the end of the day. People feel engaged. We leave them thinking. We cover all the formats. I love that pick. I do think Michael Thomas will be back. It's possible he will be effective. There's a lot of ifs there, and you have to pay for it. I mean, gosh, again, if there's any setback, I like to think of the what ifs. How many what ifs does it take to get this guy all the way up? One Michael Thomas ankle twist, and this guy is like top target, right? We're not going to see Kamara to start. You mentioned getting out of the box early. You mentioned getting into that wealth of wide receivers in the middle. A guy like Olave checks every single one of those boxes for me. Among trying to make these kind of correlative pairs and stuff. So that's what I'm into. I'm more into trying to pair guys. I have one that's interesting, like Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews. That's early. But you kind of circle back and get Duvernay. So you can kind of leave that stack. Right, I hit it early, tack on a little Duvernay at the end, and you never know where that's going to go. You kind of leave yourself that out, which I absolutely love. All right, I got to get out of here. We're right up at the hour. I want to see what else I can pick your brain before you go. Chris, you did such an awesome job. I love you, man. You're the man. All right, how about the futures thing? Just talk to me the theory, and I guess if you had one, that'd be okay. You saw the outline, but just for people, listen, I'm a grump.
Yeah.
I'm a cheapo. I'm a nefarious cheapskate. I have trouble. This is in general. So it's not like the poo-poo rain cloud the NFL. It's just I don't like to hang up futures bets for minus 110 in the first place. I'm over here knocking down plus 125s, baby. You know what I mean? Like, what am I hanging up 110 for 6 months for? I got 145 on somebody tonight. So that aside, then I've done it before, and I got called a wet blanket. And I've had people tell me, if you're going to bet like this, don't even put it in public. I took all of the running backs that I thought were being a little over expected on, and I took them all. I determined what I wanted to bet. I smashed all the unders, and I just figured I'm going to get the majority of them. And I did. I think I hit almost every single one of them. The majority of these overs do not hit. Football is incredibly hard. And the problem is there isn't enough time to make up for it, right? So the twisted ankle that cost you 2 games, all of a sudden it's 2 out of 17, and you lost 1 out of 9. You lost 12% of your season, and now you can't make it up, even if you go for $140. The expectations can't meet the rate, and now the market, especially when we get close. So here's the last thing: can we bet on overs? And I think if you're going to do it, you got to do it now because they move up, and that's when I swoop in with the unders. The day before first kickoff, under. I mean, it's like a known thing of mine. It's awful. I hate it. I feel like the worst because guess what? Someone may or may not have an under J.K. Dobbins ticket already. You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you want to do?
I know. Dude, you're so sharp. That I can't stand unders really, and that's probably
we hate them.
And that's probably bad.
It's
it's bad to think like that. It really is. I will give like an under here and there. In football throughout the season. if, like you said, if like the market is just overvaluing a player or people are just like really hammering overs, all of a sudden you find some value on unders. But I'm with you on the season long stuff. It's just so risky. And honestly, I learned the hard way myself of doing it. You have to learn the hard way. People like it. People want you to project. So, I mean, you do find some edges. You know, some things worked out last year. And some things are, you know, you get a little lucky when Cam Akers went down with the injury. All of a sudden, like I saw Darrell Henderson at like 950 rushing yards. I'm like, no chance. Like I'll take the under on that.
Yeah, I know.
J.K. Dobbins went down.
That.
You hate to be like that, right? It's like, what are you doing? You had J.K. Dobbins went down. It's like I rushed to get to the under on Gus Edwards.
Right.
And then, or no, I think I went the other way. I rushed to get the over on Gus Edwards, and then all of a sudden he suffered an injury. There were some things that I hit on last year, like Devontae Smith with the Eagles. Like I think his receiver prop was at like 700. It's like, okay, you see some edges, mostly with rookies and things like books are not sure where to kind of gauge those guys. So you can see some edges to take some overs, but this is like, we're being honest here. It's a brutal sport. There's tons of injuries. Like injuries just happen and you got to wait like 4 or 5 months, 6 months for this ticket. You said at minus 110, minus 120. It's not for me. If you're going to do it, I would dive into some unders. You could do division stuff. I got one here because I thought you were going to bring this up. Like you could go Bills, Colts, Rams, Packers at plus 800 as like a division.
Oh, I like
parlay.
that. See, that's cool. You're thinking
you could do something like that.
Yes.
Instead of taking the Bills at minus 225 or the Colts at minus 125, you're not into that. But you could maybe parlay some division winners and
okay,
have
that's
some fun
sharp. I like that. No, that's.
But
cool.
I wouldn't take too many overs on props. There was one that I was gonna come at you with, and it was Fields. But again, he's a Russian quarterback. He's young. Some of these young quarterbacks learn the hard way by extending plays and getting smoked. We saw that last year with Fields a couple times. He took some unnecessary hits. Huh? He missed some times. 525, you seeing rushing prop? I see 499 over at BetMGM, over at the prop shop.
Oh, you're going over. You'd be looking at
499. I would go over 499. I think PointsBet has him at 599. I think as we get
you mentioned that 50-yard floor.
Season,
okay, I like the math there. Although I like the math there. Okay.
I think if you get over closer to the season, this guy's probably in around 6. I could see him 625, 650. Again, you can't take it all in, but the last 7 games, he averaged 51 rushing yards.
Yeah,
if you put that over 17, he's at 800 rushing yards. Say he's not getting 50 a game, say he's getting 35 a game. Then we're still looking at the over hitting.
Yeah.
I like 499. So like that's one that I don't mind, but honestly, I'm with you. I mean, it's hard to get the boring answer, but it's tough to hammer these overs.
And they juiced a lot of times, 130, 140. It's just like, because you know what's funny? I wonder often about the calculus, because why pitch this at 130? Why not just move it up 5 yards? Like, are we that particular? Exactly. Like, again, and this is me. Chris, I've always been the stupid guy going up against the quant guys. And you know what? I've lost many a rounds and many a fight. But a lot of times afterwards, they're like, yo, man, maybe I got to pay more attention to stupid people because they have something to say. You know, sometimes you just like, how accurate do we think we are that we're within 5 rushing yards over a season? I mean, gosh, missed tackles. You and I watched the Eagles. Basically, you watched it with me as I rewatched it on Mondays.
Yeah,
and
you were messaging me on Monday about the Eagles plays. Like, you were. Dude, it was awesome. I know. It was very funny to hear from you the next morning to get your thoughts because I knew that you were watching all the.
I knew that you cared
from all the games. Yeah,
there was not a team. And that'll be the last thing of again, people. Mr. Stat here. Telling you, be very wary of the statistics. Not only are the samples very small, many of them, if not all of them, are so vulnerable to the other ongoing variables.
Absolutely.
That they're almost spoiled totally. Trust me, I love analytical NFL work. I really love the people that do it. I collect it, I follow it, I read it. But when it comes down to it, a lot of times you watch it and you're like, a guy like Fields.
You know what? One thing I will say,
you know?
Yeah, I think we nailed it. I think honestly, like it really is not worth your money. I think if you want to get involved in like some NFL futures, you try things like I'm looking at DraftKings comeback player of the year, like Allen
That's
Robinson,
cool.
25-1. Like,
Oh, he's a
like
good.
I'm a
See,
little
you're always
sprinkle on
very
that.
good with that. You're very good with
Like,
those. That's how you do it. Boom.
uh,
That's how you do it.
That's how you try to find
That's how
some
you do it.
value. I mean, Allen
No, that's how you
Robinson,
do it.
best quarterback he's ever played with this year, and
Yep.
Stafford and
Yep.
Sean McVay, best play caller. Robert Woods was good as a number 2 in that offense. Odell Beckham Jr. was fantastic as a number 2.
Dude,
in that
I'm
offense
running.
throughout the
I'm running
playoffs.
to that book. I'm running to the book right now.
25-1 on DK. Like Henry and Jameis, these guys are favored CMC, but like Allen Robinson, would anybody be shocked if he had
That's
like
a
a
good one.
double-digit touchdown season and things like that? Or maybe take some shots on wide
Did you have to
receivers
play?
and
Like ETN has a chance, right? Because he didn't really play at all. Does he
ETN has a
qualify?
chance. He's 25-1. I don't think he would really qualify. Like why would he be a comeback player of the year? Like if he had a really good campaign.
He got hurt
we didn't
before he
even see
played,
him.
I guess.
I don't know if that
you're
one
right.
would truly count, but like Robinson does stand out there to me at
So how about those Giants
25-1.
you mentioned? So now what if I could take the work again for the third time, the very last thing? Because I'm a sponge right now. You're talking about the major moves with bad teams. Should that be a place to look for? Like, so does that make, I don't know, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, right? I'm just to put names to the teams, right? Trevor Lawrence, we mentioned bad teams that could undergo a transformation. Remember, these things are awarded by people. So it's generally, right, running back, quarterback, more or less, maybe a defensive end. More or less,
maybe. But it has been, I think, for the most part, quarterbacks. I think Dak may have got it one year. We saw Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow, potentially.
Yeah, got to be a quarterback. Is the first place to look.
Quarterback, yeah. I mean, and if you look up at the top, I mean, Jameis is 5 plus 550. Like, I don't think like he's going to have the type of season where it's like,
oh, how about Russ?
Game changer.
What's Russ price? He's maybe my pick right now.
Yeah,
he didn't have a good season. I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at it now.
Believe it or not, I don't see him. But
he went for 3,100 yards through the air, 25 touchdowns to 6 picks, less than 200 yards on the ground. We don't really expect that two rushing QBs. There's a chance he sits back to sling. Right, he could throw for 4,200 yards. No, maybe.
Oh, he could. I don't see him here on DK, but it's something to keep an eye on. Maybe the only quarterbacks I see are just guys that I just don't think could be like game changers, like Winston Jones, Trubisky, Marcus.
No, Daniel Jones. I don't think so. A lot of running.
I don't think fully. I'm not at that price. I think he could potentially win the award. With Brian Daboll there, as we talked about.
How about my guy? Dude? I have to post. I have to not be a fraud, right? If you do your work, you got to believe in it. I did that triple slash work, and the two people that just jumped out, and I guess they could both be mark the boxes here, would be Marvin Jones was off the page from a usage standpoint. So they were garbage. He's on the bad team, good quarterback. And the other one was how did I drop this one? Devontae Parker with the Patriots. Right. So he was a kind of a prototypical number one. We've seen him get fed. I mean, we have seen him just absolutely get fed. He's kind of always hurt, but there's no, I mentioned this to you on Twitter, there's no target hog right now. And I'm not saying I expect him to go and get it. Hold on. Possible that he's good for like 8 catches a game. It's definitely possible, right?
Oh, it's very possible. Yeah. And he's got a nose for the end zone.
Seen him up close too, right? Huh?
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And that's
very up close.
And that conversation happened when they signed.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's not in the spreadsheet, dude. You know what I mean?
No. Like, we've seen this guy twice a year for multiple years. Like,
and he's beaten him too. He's beaten him
multiple times. He has a nose for the end zone. Jacoby Myers does not. Kendrick Bourne's
big
a nice
boy
player, but whatever. Yeah, Devontae Parker is an interesting one.
I was doing a bit of diving into him. He's also he's very good on both sides of the quarterback. He's very good at all of the different routes. He can go deep. He can post. He can hook in. We've seen him with the problem he's had is I was trying to figure out like why no one wanted him. He has some of the lowest kind of separation numbers and stuff that is out there.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know if that and 275 might get you on the bus if you're getting enough targets. So
for sure. Another one I'll throw out. I mean, Cam Akers 25-1 is like a guy with the Achilles injury.
Very good.
Even though he came back last year, that's not bad. Robert Woods is 50-1. Like these are things I'd rather take a little shot on. Hold
on. Yeah, hold on. Just hold on, people. Think about this. You could take $110 to win $100 on one player prop, or take the $100, split it on the 12 or 15 things Chris and I just laid out, where you can hit more than one of those. Comeback player with an MVP or one of those things.
Yeah,
and just hit total exponential growth there. And I think that's how you player futures. I think if you're focused on minus 110, I don't think you should put your money on the shelf for months. All right, Chris, that'll do it. I got to get out of here. I really appreciate you. I mean, we were already friends. I don't know if you're ready for an American, bestie, but I promise you, if I do see you at that, if I see you at that Flex League,
and you will,
do not drive. And if I find out you have one green American dollar on you, if I find out you have one American dollar on you, anything outside of your emergency credit card, you are going to be in trouble, my friend, because those drinks are on me. You bet your ace on it, man. Chris, we appreciate you. Everybody rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Audio only pod, fantasy football picks and bets. Chris Meaney, just the absolute man. I mean, the nicest guy. God, could we just give it up to Pat one more time?
Absolutely.
The collection of kind of crazy people that he's put together, this unique, eclectic group of wild with smart but personal. I have never been more flattered to be included in any group, really. I mean, usually the groups are included.
You fit right in, dude. A good addition.
Which in some places is an insult, which I like. Which is the whole point. Which is the whole damn point of this, because we are doing it differently. Everybody, thank you so much. Mayo Media Net 2022. Keep it up. I'm going to keep up the legends. I've just had goat after goat after goat. We'll keep it up. And then everything MLB moving averages. Gosh, if you were looking for baseball right now, I think we are doing it like no one else is. And God, if you could stomach anymore, you really want to make money. I think I have the tools. If you want to make money, Chris is the man for that. Chris, gosh, your betting record speaks for itself. You're the only person I've tailed blind in my entire life. So there, how do you like that? Last compliment on the way out the door. All right, everybody, peace. Matty Best, sorry for going over now. We love you, everybody. Enjoy it.
Love
Peace.
You. Peace.